In a case that gripped the U.S. and sent shockwaves through the global media, Bryan Kohberger, the man charged with the brutal 2022 murders of 4 University of Idaho students, has reportedly agreed to a plea deal that will allow him to avoid trial. For many, this news may bring a form of closure. For others, it raises critical questions. Is justice served without a full public trial? And what are the broader consequences of allowing the most heinous crimes to be settled quietly behind courtroom doors? Under the terms of the plea agreement, Kohberger will reportedly avoid the death penalty in exchange for admitting guilt to the 4 murders, committed with chilling precision in November 2022. The case had garnered national and international attention due to its brutal nature, the use of modern forensics including cell phone tracking and DNA evidence, and Kohberger's academic background in criminology. A high-profile trial was anticipated to shed light not only on the crime, but on broader societal themes: mental health, criminal profiling, and the limits of justice in the digital age. Now, that courtroom drama is unlikely to unfold. Legal experts argue that plea deals are often strategic, conserving public resources and sparing victims' families the trauma of prolonged proceedings. But critics worrying that bypassing a jury trial robs the public of full transparency, while setting a precedent that even the most shocking crimes can be negotiated out of public view. For victims' advocates and international observers, this signals a potential weakening of a cornerstone of democratic justice systems, the right to a full, fair, and open trial. While the case itself is uniquely American, its implications are global. Legal systems around the world, from the UK to India to South Africa, have wrestled with the balance between plea bargains and public trials. In nations where judicial integrity is already under pressure, this case will be scrutinized as either a model of legal efficiency or a cautionary tale of quiet injustice. Human rights organizations are especially alert to how high-profile plea deals are handled in democratic systems, often using them to benchmark transparency and accountability. Moreover, in a digital world where court cases go viral and misinformation spreads fast, the absence of trial proceedings leaves room for speculation, conspiracy theories, and the erosion of public trust. For countries battling disinformation or politically charged justice systems, the Kohberger outcome may unintentionally offer cover for backroom deals in more fragile democracies. In short, how America handles its most sensitive cases reverberates far beyond its borders. For the families of the victims Madison Morgan, Kaylee Goncalves, Shauna Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, this plea deal may offer the fastest path to legal closure. It spares them the re-traumatization of trial testimony, gruesome evidence, and months of media circus, but it also denies them the catharsis of seeing justice unfold publicly. In cultures where the legal process is as much about healing as punishment, bypassing trial may feel like skipping a vital step in collective mourning. Globally, victims' rights groups emphasize the importance of public trials not just for punishment, but for narrative reclamation, ensuring that the focus remains on the lives lost, not the criminal's psychological profile or the spectacle of guilt. This plea deal may bring legal resolution, but it reopens an age-old debate: is justice about efficiency or truth? Bryan Kohberger's plea may close the legal chapter in one of the most disturbing murder cases in recent U.S. history, but the broader questions remain. What message does this send to the world about accountability? And when justice happens behind closed doors, is it still justice? Watch the full news update and weigh in on this critical legal moment.
Suspect in those horrific 2022 killings of 4 University of Idaho students has just accepted a plea deal. Let's get right to CNN's Gene Casares, also joining us, Laura Coates. Gene, first to you. What are we learning about the plea deal? How did it come about?
Well, what we're learning, the Idaho Statements is getting this, citing letters that were sent to the family members, and what is being reported by them is that a plea deal was reached in this death penalty case. You know, I've covered this case from the beginning in Pennsylvania, and as the evidence and the discovery kept going back and forth and the pretrial motions kept being heard and the orders were issued, any defense that Kohberger had was wedged away bit by bit by bit. And the final blow really came this last week when just days ago the order came down that he would not be able to have any alternate perpetrators, because the defense had said, we know of some possible suspects that we want to bring in this case that are the actual ones that did it. And the judge said, no, it is wild speculation if you believe that these people committed the crimes against these 4 victims. They also were not going to be allowed to have alibi, because under Idaho law, you have to have people that actually saw you at a location during the time of the murders, date, time, and place, and they would be willing to testify. They didn't have that. He didn't have an alibi. Now let's go the other direction. The prosecution had DNA that a lab said was a conclusive match to Bryan Kohberger on this knife sheath. No knife, but a knife sheath that was found next to the body. The statistical match of DNA next to the body of one of the victims. That was the star evidence for the prosecution, no question about it. But Jake, I want to say that I have covered many, many death penalty trials of high-profile defendants, and my gut told me this was going to happen, because a way to save your life is to plead guilty, because this is Idaho. If he had been found guilty because of all of this prosecution evidence and the lack of defense, the lack of reasonable doubt, it would have gone to the death penalty phase. And this is Idaho. And I believe that they would have sentenced him to death. And I did some digital pieces recently about all the high-profile defendants that did have deals. BTK, the serial killer out of Wichita, Kansas, he copped a plea deal. But there will be a sentencing hearing, Jake, and it will be big. And if they do what they've done in other high-profile cases, it will be a mini trial, because the community of Moscow is going to want to know why he did it. And now we don't have to say he's innocent until proven guilty, because per the Idaho statements, he is agreeing to plead guilty. And the community deserves to know why, because there's no motive here. No motive. And in pretrial hearings, I heard that he did not have any direct connection to any of the victims.
So, Laura, Jean just explained why it would be that the defendant might agree to such a plea deal to save his life. Are you surprised, given what Jean just laid out in terms of the evidence against him and also the law in Idaho that doesn't sound like it's very hospitable to presenting any sort of defense? Are you surprised that the state would go along with the plea deal?
Well, I have to tell you, there's always the uncertainty of a conviction, even in spite of the overwhelming evidence that Jean has been meticulously following. And of course, this defendant had no more road. He had no alibi defense that was possible. He couldn't call anyone to support it. He had no alternate perpetrators. In fact, the people that he named as potential suspects had submitted their own DNA and the like, and had been, essentially excluded from this case. You have him without any other recourse, and it's such an ironic statement that somebody who will plead guilty to murder is very concerned about saving his own life. There's an irony in, of course, that. But it's not just because Idaho is not hospitable to defendants. It's because there are requirements that must be met in order to ensure that you are not spinning a juror's wheels, you're not draining the public's resources, and that there actually is a viable reason, that you're not just naming somebody hoping that speculation will rule the day and that injustice may occur. But in any event, to Jean's bigger point here as well, Jake, the frustration of the Moscow community, the sadness, the profound tragedy. They want to know the why, but this particular defendant will be under no requirement to actually say the why. If he provides some solace or comfort and a reason, we know it will not be enough. But in any event, the idea that he is taken off the table for the prosecutors, they want to ensure that if they believe this person, which he is agreeing to, has committed these heinous acts, the idea that he will never see any life beyond the bars might be sufficient for the families who will ultimately, at any sentencing, have their day in court to talk about the impact on their lives and others that somebody who's pled guilty to these heinous crimes has had. It will be taken into account, but 4 consecutive life sentences possible here. He is never getting out. A plea removes his right to appeal. This is over for him.
And Jean, CNN can now independently confirm this plea deal. And I just want to take a second to note the names of the victims in this case. Madison Muggan, Kaylee Gonclaves, Zaina Kernodal, Ethan Chapin. These murders were in 2022. You've closely covered how this case has unfolded and the impact on the families. What can you tell us about them? And if I mispronounced any of those names, please feel free to correct me.
Of course, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And these 4 young lives were just about to begin their adulthood. They were graduating from the University of Idaho, Moscow. And these families wanted justice. They wanted to go to the trial. Mr. Goncalves has said on our air that he was for the death penalty, that he believed that that was just in this case. But you had asked the question about the prosecution. Would they agree with this? The cost factor to this trial was going to be huge. Not only was the trial moved from Moscow to Boise, but the jury was going to be sequestered, at least for part of the trial. You've got to bring in everyone from Moscow. You've got to bring in witnesses. They were going to fly in witnesses from Pennsylvania. And who would bear the cost of this entirety? Moscow, the very small community of Moscow and Latah County. And I think that that is something that everyone, except the victims' families, I don't believe that they would be for this, would be for. Right. But one last thing, the judge in one of the final pretrial hearings looked at the defense and said, I want your paperwork on any final best offer that you receive. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I couldn't believe he said it in open court. And that means that this has been going on for potentially a while, and now we are hearing it. But of course, it is days before. It is not after the trial begins or during the jury selection. There is time, but there will be a sentence hearing. Those victim impact statements will be monumental in this case.
All right, Laura Coates and Gene Casares, thank you so much.